You've probably heard Uganda called the Pearl of Africa. It's a beautiful place. But what if I told you about a time, for 5 straight years, when that pearl was just drenched in blood? We're going to dive into the Ugandan Bush War. It's an incredibly brutal conflict that, honestly, most people have never even heard of.
All right, let's just start with a number because, wow, 500,000. That's the estimated number of civilians who died in this war. And get this, it only lasted 5 years. This wasn't a war fought on some distant battlefield. No, this was a war waged directly against the people of Uganda.
So you have to ask yourself, how does a country just fall apart like this? Well, this timeline here, it gives us the roadmap. It all kicks off with a dodgy election, which, surprise, surprise, sparks a rebellion. Then comes a brutal government response. The whole thing spirals, the government collapses, and the rebels take over. Let's walk through how it all went down.
To really get this, you have to go back to the very beginning, to the spark. This whole thing wasn't random. It was a political firestorm that just torched any hope people had in democracy.
So here's the spark. It's 1980. There's an election, and a guy named Milton Obote gets back into power. But his main rival, Yoweri Museveni, along with a bunch of other opposition leaders, cried foul. They were convinced it was rigged, and they didn't just go to the courts. No, they completely rejected the result and decided, all right, if politics won't work, we'll pick up guns.
And just like that, you have your two sides. On one hand, you've got the government's official army, the UNLA. It was mostly made up of guys from northern ethnic groups, the Acholi and the Langi. And on the other side, you've got Museveni's rebels, the NRA, who had massive support from the Baganda people in central Uganda. You see that split? North versus central? That ethnic divide is, well, it's the key to understanding just how ugly things were about to get.
Now, this war wasn't fought everywhere. The violence, the real horror of it, got focused, laser-focused, on one specific place. An area whose name would become infamous, the Luwero Triangle.
So what is the Luwero Triangle? It's this region right north of the capital. And here's the thing, it was the absolute heartland of rebel support. So the government's strategy was as simple as it was brutal. If this is where the rebels live, then everyone who lives here is an enemy. They weren't just fighting a rebel army anymore. They were, in effect, at war with the civilians living there.
And the scale of that war on civilians, it's just staggering. Look at this number, 80%. In one single parish, 80% of all heads of households were massacred. Think about that. 4 out of every 5 families, their leader, gone. This wasn't an accident of war. This was a systematic plan to literally tear apart the very fabric of society there.
And it didn't stop in the Luwero Triangle. The government also went after another group, the Banyarwanda, who are people with Rwandan roots living in Uganda. At least 100,000 of them were targeted. It just proves that this was becoming a pattern, using someone's ethnicity as a death sentence.
So by 1983, we're past the point of this just being random acts of cruelty by soldiers. Nope, this brutality became official government policy. It was all wrapped up in a huge military campaign with, and you can't make this up, a really cheerful-sounding name.
Operation Bonanza. I mean, it sounds like a party, right? But its goal was the exact opposite: total destruction. The government sent in almost half its entire army, and their job wasn't just to fight rebels. It was to burn everything to the ground, villages, farms, you name it. The goal was to terrorize people into giving up, and it killed tens of thousands.
And you want to know what was fueling all this? Just look at the graffiti the soldiers left behind on ruined homes. Museveni, Rudi, Kwinya Rwanda. It means, Museveni, go back to your home in Rwanda. They were trying to paint their own citizens as foreigners, as invaders in their own country. It was propaganda designed to justify killing them. Just chill.
Okay, let's be really clear about something. The government army was without a doubt responsible for most of the killing. But, and this is important, international groups who were watching said that nobody's hands were clean in this war.
So you have organizations like Amnesty International looking into this, and they basically said that the NRA's rebellion is what created the situation, the context for the government's mass killings. But they were also very clear that both sides were committing horrific human rights abuses. You just had a whole population of people trapped in the middle of it all.
When you look at the government side, the UNLA, the list of atrocities is just, it's long and it's horrifying. We're talking systematic destruction of villages, mass murder in the Luwero Triangle, deliberately targeting people based on their ethnicity, and burning farms to starve people out. That's where that giant death toll comes from.
But again, what about the rebels, the NRA? Well, they were committing terrible acts too. We know they were carrying out executions without trials, torturing people they thought were government agents, and killing civilians they even suspected of being collaborators. It just became this vicious, brutal cycle, and ordinary people were the ones paying for it.
So we get to 1985, 5 years of this hell, and the Obote government, the one that started so much of this, it just starts to crumble. Not from the outside, but from within. Its own army was falling apart.
And it happened fast. A top general gets killed, and morale just plummets. Then those ethnic tensions inside the army, the same ones that fueled the war, they explode. The Acholi soldiers mutiniate against their Langi leaders. Boom, a coup. Obote's gone. But when the new guys in charge offer the NRA a deal to share power, the rebels say, no thanks. They see their chance, push forward, and take the capital.
So the war is technically over, but the nightmare? Not even close. The legacy it left behind was just catastrophic. You've got up to 500,000 people dead. The ethnic hatred is worse than ever. You have generations of people completely traumatized. And the violence didn't actually stop, it just moved. This war set the stage for even more conflict in northern Uganda for decades to come.
It really leaves you with this one heavy question, doesn't it? What is the true cost of taking power by force? The Ugandan Bush War gives us a pretty grim answer. It's not just the bodies, as horrifying as that is. The true cost is in the scars, the deep generational wounds that a country like Uganda is still trying to heal from right now.